So now we will be talking about the informal assessment. So what is informal assessment? Informal assessment is a procedure to gather information about a person regarding his behavior, emotion, personality, or cognitive abilities. In this gathering procedure, it uses multiple techniques and integrated them to develop a hypothesis about psychological process in question and formulate answers to those questions. Another definition is everyday assessment people make about themselves or others. First, it is not much dismissed, so it is how we assess or observe our own emotion or other emotions. Every day, for example, you saw a kind student at school, and based on what you observe, your assessment is that maybe the student is having a bad day, an emotional breakdown, or maybe one of his or loved ones died. There are many things that you'll come up with because it's only based on your observation. These assessments do not have to be observed formal process, unlike formal assessment which is done in orderly systematic manner. Informal assessment is not standardized because it is only based in what you observe. So next is the another definition is the basis of assessing or unstructured or simply observation. For example, a mother observes that his son in high school studies his lessons once in a while. She will state that her son will not be successful in college. Another example is when a teacher observes that his or her pupils make a lot of noise and do not attend to the lessons inside the classroom. He or she may immediately claim or conclude that the students are attention deficit. Based on those examples, informal assessment shows that it is our simple observation in some instances the basis for assessment. Next is that informal assessment it is a kind of response to exchange and interaction with other people. For example, if the parents tell their daughter to study for her lesson but she responds that she is not interested to do so, then the parents may say that she has a negative attitude towards education and may further think that she has low chances of succeeding in school. Informal assessment may also suspect whether or not a person is suffering from an emotional problem. For example, a friend of yours is posting or tweeting problematic posts or emotional posts. Your immediate action will be to ask them if they are okay because you observe that they're suffering emotionally. So next is that it gives clue to what might be an individual is going because of their behavior of characteristic being studied or described. So informal assessment gives the most possible conclusion because a person don't limit himself in terms of their behavior. They express their own characteristics that why we get close on how the person acts on certain circumstances. Now we will talk about the application of assessment. What are the functions and uses of psychological assessment? It provides many advantages, foremost of which is to gain a better understanding on oneself. Psychological assessment is also known as psychological testing. It allows a psychologist to see the full pictures of a person's strength and limitation and report on them in an objective but helpful manner. It also functions as a double-edged sword because it benefits both the assessor and the client of the person being assessed. Now, here are the function and uses of psychological assessment. Number one, detection of specific behavior. A psychological assessment used to measure and detect the abilities of a person. Second is the individual differences. Used to measure the individual differences between abilities of a different person and the performance of the same person as at different time. Number three, to diagnose by psychological test. Usually used in clinical psychology because in clinical psychology, a test function is to diagnose mental disorder. Some of its major tests are the Bender Gestalt test and the MMPI or the Minnesota Multi-Basic Personality Inventory. Next is the legal classification. It helps in classifying a number of people into different categories, for example, normal and abnormal, criminal and innocent, intellectual and mental retarded, able and disabled, and etc. There are four methods of legal classification, which are selection, screening, certification, and placement. The fifth one is promoting self-understanding, providing standardized information about the abilities, capabilities, aptitude, potential, competences, interests, traits, and states of a person which helps in understanding one's personality and planning future perspective. The sixth one is that it is also used in program evaluation, used to see the effectiveness of a particular program which is assessed by the application of some kind of test. This function is usually performed by an achievement test. 7. It is used for scientific inquiry or research. Some experts use tests for research purpose, which provide information about the mental level and personality of the subject. Next is the use for military selection. It used for training, diagnosis, and identification of officers who need to be demobilized because of mental imbalance or reoccurring trauma that could jeopardize the life of other officers during operation. They are also used in industry. These are helpful in selection in classing person for placement in jobs that range from simpler semi-skilled to be highly skilled. Next, it is used for education. Function like a double-edged sword between it benefits both teachers, assessor, and student person being assessed. Assessment is the key component of learning because it helps students learn. When students are able to see how they are doing in class, they are able to determine whether or not they understand the course material assessment. Assessment can also help motivate the student. If students know what they are doing poorly, they may begin to work harder, and for a teacher, assessment helps them just as it helps students. Frequent assessment allows teachers to see if their teaching has been effective. Assessment also allows teachers to ensure students learn what they need to know in order to meet the course's learning objective. 11. It is used in mental hospitals. It is used primarily for an individual diagnosis of factors associated with personal problems of learning, behavior, attitudes, or specific interpersonal relation. And that's all for this lesson. Thank you for listening. I am Gabriel Brian Bibonji and my partner is Richelina Mahan. We are the reporters of Chapter 3, Lesson 5 with the title of Assessing for Self-Improvement, Directing My Destiny. Once again, thank you for listening. Goodbye.